Hey guys. Hi Conrad. Hey Edith. Sorry, I broke a nail. Actually, when I went to do that, I absolutely forgot I was streaming. And suddenly I looked up and I was like, oh yes, there are 79 people watching me. Hey, Edith. Hey, Yolango. Hi, Matties. Hey, Lewis. Hey, Jamil. Hi, Deanna. Hi, Raphael. Hi, Vadiot. Hi, Savea. Hi, Julie. sorry. I just took in granules. Hi, Philip. Hi, David. Hey, Jason. Hey, Raphael. So more than likely, whatever you think is happening isn't what's happening. In a way, your thoughts can never really think about what's happening. Your thoughts think in their patterns, in the way that you're used to seeing the world. So if you're used to seeing yourself as victim to the world, then that's the way you'll see the situation. If you're used to seeing yourself as a good person, then you'll tell yourself the situation in your head as if you're the good person. If you're used to controlling things, then your thoughts will report back how you controlled it, or who's controlling, or this person is over controlling. Whatever way your mind is used to thinking is the way that you'll see what's happening. And then there's what's actually happening, which isn't something that can be thought about. What's actually happening is indescribable. Thoughts come and go in that indescribableness, but they certainly don't describe it. This is a mystery. What's happening is a mystery. You've been taught that my hair's blonde, that my face is white, that I have a ring on. You've been taught all these words, and then the words have meaning and associations, and we manage to communicate. But that doesn't mean that's reality. There's actually this undescribable world that's happening, this alive presence that's mysterious, this I am and this empty looking, and that's instant. Non-duality is a remembering of that freedom that already is. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your brain changes the way it thinks, although more than likely it is going to change the way it thinks. But it's this movement back to the experiencer rather than the belief that you are an experience, i.e. the person. So there's this energetic movement that happens. And that changes the person, and that stops the seeking to find home in the future. But that brain is still going to have its particular systems of thoughts, its particular way of seeing things. So this is a question from Sava. Hi Lisa, why am I ending up with men who hurt me or disrespect me? Do I not love myself enough? Do I need to go into systematic family therapy, posing my parents there? Or is it just written in my fate that I keep searching for love where there is no love on the outside? Should I accept that I will spend the rest of my life alone and just get married to myself? Thanks, namaste. I can't answer that just from reading that little bit as to why you attract men that disrespect you. I would recommend some type of therapy which helps you address that, or work with somebody that can help you address that as to why you keep doing it. It's a habit, and at the moment, like, it's not that it's your fate, but it's a habit that's inside the body, and that habit can be broken. There is no free will, so it's not like you have choice to free yourself in this. But what can happen is the body can go to something like therapy, and it can recondition itself. It can understand in the past why it picks certain lovers or certain partners, and it can examine that, and it can examine patterns from childhood, and through that examination and bringing it to consciousness, and there might be another decision made with choosing partners, but it might not. Ultimately, you're never going to find love in anyone or anything. You're going to find love as your essence of I am, that alive presence. Hello? I'm sorry, somebody just told me the volume's low, but I don't think it is. Hello? I'm sorry, somebody just told me the volume's low, but I don't think it is. Hello? I'm sorry, somebody just told me the volume's low, but I don't think it is. Hello? Sounds good to me. Hello? 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 Maybe I can put it closer to me, but it sounds really good, the volume. Maybe I can put it closer to me. I think it's to do with you, Alenga. I don't think it's the volume is low. Alenga, I think it's you. With relationships, the freedom is always in the I am, in the live presence. You can never actually be in love with someone. You think you can be, because what can happen is you can meet someone or be with someone, and there can be such joy at this that the seeking collapses, and you feel like you love that person because they give you everything you want in that moment. So the seeking collapses, and then the mind tells you it's that person, you love that person. But actually, really what's happening is because in that moment you don't want to be anywhere else, there's no desire for anything else, then the love is remembered for who you are. Volume is low, Lisa. Other YouTube links are okay. That's strange. How could the volume be low? Okay, I'll go and fix the volume. If I get cut off, I will be back. That should have fixed it, guys, I think. So if anyone has any questions or who'd like to call in, there is no questions tonight. It's very quiet. Hey, Anne. Hey. Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you.
I've never tried Skype before, so I actually don't know how it works.
Actually, I can hear you. I can hear you enough now. But if you had like headphones, then it might be a bit better. If you had like a microphone with headphones, you know, like that you get with the iPhone.
Too bad. I haven't got any of those things. So, should we cut it off, or is it okay?
Yeah, maybe it's not a very good line, so the other people won't be able to hear very well.
Well, then that's just too bad.
Yeah.
Tonight. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Bye.
So Martin asks if I can say something a little bit about writing to understand your conditioning and your experience. So there's two different things that can happen when you're investigating this subject. There is this alive presence, the remembering of the alive presence of who you are, and that's the most important part, is this remembrance. But the other part is examining your conditioning and examining what you're seeking for and relaxing the seeking. We're always going to be conditioned beings, and we're going to be conditioned in positive ways and in negative ways. So there will be positive ways like we're conditioned to, it depends what you define as positive, to be nice people, or to be fun, to be happy, to be joyful, to enjoy work. Or we can be conditioned to
be antisocial maybe, have anxiety, have fearful thoughts, all these different things. And it can also be a genetic thing. And there can be this seeking energy which claims all of that to be who you are, and that you're that person, that you're the mental activity, you're this person that's alive and aware inside the body, and that your happiness, your freedom is found in getting pleasure. So often getting to particular conditioning or getting away from particular conditioning. And this creates a lot of mental noise and disturbance because it's a lie, it's not true that that's who you are and that you're limited to that. And it also increases like anxiety, worry, and obsessions with certain types of thoughts. And when waking up, often what needs to happen is there's a hearing of non-duality, but there's also a dealing with a certain amount of psychology in the body and the energies in the body and understanding them to a certain extent in order for that seeking energy to relax enough so it can be seen that you are that freedom that's beyond the personality. And there's so many different ways in which you can understand yourself. You can do it through meditation, you could do it through therapy, you could do it through writing therapy. What I used to do when I was younger is I used to write theatre. I studied theatre at college and at university, and I used to write theatre plays. And what I found I used to do was I often used to write about, and still do, write about things that are close to my heart, and I explore my mentality through that. So I write spontaneously and I just let it flow out, and then I can explore what's going on inside my thoughts or my processes or my relationships with people or how I'm seeing something, and I can see it from different angles. What I used to do a lot when I was younger was I would write out difficult situations or difficult relationships that I was in so I could have a different perspective on it. So I think it's beautiful. And you can just spontaneously write things to try to understand yourself better. But really you also need to integrate it onto an energetic level, so you need to feel that stuff in your body as well, not just keep it mental. And you'll begin to realise how, like, especially if you write it down, how you're just a conditioned instrument that keeps repeating the same things again and again and again in different formations. And that might never stop, but what can happen is a seeing that that's not who you are, that's something that appears in who you are, but who you are is the experiencer of that. And that can rebalance to a certain extent. But you're never going to be a perfect conditioned being or without conditioning. I once tried to write a play with an unconditioned being in it, with somebody that had no conditioning, and it was impossible. I tried to write like a Buddhist master that was unconditioned, and you just can't write it because it's not realistic. You can't have someone without wants, and you can't have someone without conditioning. You could maybe have someone that's not attached to that and identified with that, but you can't. The body-mind mechanism still works in that pattern. It still moves towards that which is pleasurable and moves away from that which is painful, and it still follows its particular patterns. Often what we're aiming for is we're aiming to be totally unconditioned because we believe that's what will be lovable. If that's our particular conditioning, not in all people, but if our particular conditioning is that, you know, if our parents have often told us that we're not allowed to exist, or we're not allowed to be something, or we're not allowed to react, then we might get this idea that to be loved is to be totally unconditioned and unreactive. So we hear non-duality, or we hear about shifting conditioning, and we seek to be this non-person just because of a habit of what we've learned from our parents, not because we actually want to be enlightened. The thinking mind, the conditioned self, doesn't give a toss about awakening. So people always call in and they're saying, you know, they're fighting the ego, or they're aware of their ego. But that one that's even aware of the ego and trying to deconstruct the ego is part of the thinking mind and does not care one iota about waking up. It cares about staying in its patterns, and it will just be using non-duality to perpetuate its patterns. You can explore yourself, and I would encourage you to use somebody as a guide to help you explore yourself. But that person never ever wakes up, and that person isn't interested in waking up. that person is interested in getting pleasure, simply pleasure. And the ultimate pleasure, funny enough, so in one way you could say it is waking up, because the ultimate pleasure is to be at home, is to be free of seeking. So ultimately that person does want that, but that person is designed to follow its pattern. So in another way, it doesn't want to arrive there because it wants to be something and be someone. So when you feel like you're battling your ego to become enlightened, it's just another game that you're playing. Instead of battling your partner, or battling your parents, or battling the money situation, or battling health, you're now battling the ego. You're fighting the ego to try and become awakened. And that whole fight is happening. And I would recommend you recondition yourself and look at your conditioning. But that whole fight that's happening between one part of the thinking mind and the other part of the thinking mind is all being seen by who? Who's seeing that? That's appearing as an experience. There's something that's experiencing it. And this is the freedom. And the experiencer has nothing to say. The experiencer doesn't think, it just is experiencing. Thinking appears and disappears in that. And that thinking mind is battling, I will fight the ego. That thinking mind can explore itself, but be aware it will explore itself dependent on the way it sees the world and dependent on the way it's conditioned. But it can also explore itself in groups with other people, which I suggest, because you'll just stay in your own particular patterns by yourself. You can do a certain amount by reading and understanding. But all of that exploration, all of that relaxing the ego and understanding the seeking and understanding this and understanding that, notice that that's all being experienced by something that doesn't think, that doesn't have a brain, that doesn't have a memory. It just is experiencing. It comes, it goes. And the memory and the brain and the thinking is appearing in that. Hey Carla, could you speak about attachment? When you lose someone you love, is it because you're attached to them, or could it be seen as pain in the moment? I find it hard to distinguish that kind of pain from the concept of attachment. But why does that really matter to you? The difference between pain and attachment? What is it that you want out of that? Like, always explore what it is you want. I can suggest maybe you want to know whether you're enlightened or not, to know you're on the right path, and just recognize that for what it is. So there's pain coming up, and maybe there's attachment coming up or not attachment coming up, and then there's some other part that wants to know which is which, and all of it's appearing in presence. You're allowed to feel pain. You're not doing anything wrong for feeling pain, or attachment if that's what arises as well. Dear Lisa, I'm quite happy with my conditioning when I'm alone, when I'm on my own. But I feel when I'm with other people, I often get their feelings, their suppressed anger, and also their contractions in their body. So after a while, I get angry and contracted as well, especially at work, where I have to be with people and can't just walk away. And that's not helpful, because my contraction will make theirs bigger, And so we get into a cycle. I would like to stay relaxed, but after a while I just can't. If I'm longer time away and on my own, I feel that I start relaxing again. Is there anything which can help dealing with that when I'm with people? Mm. I don't know what to suggest. If you feel like it's their anger that you're absorbing, and so you're becoming angry because of their anger, then it could be that you don't want to admit that you're angry and it's not their anger. But if that is the case, what you're saying, that you're feeling their suppressed anger and then it's being triggered inside of you, then I don't know the answer to that. If it's your anger, and it's not that you're just picking up on their anger, then you could explore that. But if you think it's their anger, then it's like somebody asking me, when I step too close to the fire, I keep getting burns on my hands. What should I do about that? My reply would be, walk away from the fire and move away from the fire. If you think that you might be in denial and that there is suppressed anger in you, then we could work. But if you just think it's them, then just move away from them. If you feel like they're the problem, then try and find a different job. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not denying that you can pick up people's energies. I can walk into a room and if somebody, I can read them so quickly and feel them so quickly. So I'm not denying that can be the way. But my answer to that is that I try to set up my life where I don't have to be around people that are really like angry or volatile a lot. But that's the way I deal with it. Lisa, can you please speak about safety? It seems that a lot of programming is around the idea that we're not safe and the decisions we make are based on fear. When a lot of the things that were supposed to bring safety drop, like jobs, the protection of men for women, etc., my body produces a lot of fear without reason. Yeah. That's hard for me to just speak like this the other day and there about that, because really, if I was speaking to you in person, I would help you go into your body and explore it for yourself. So I'd ask you questions, you know, like, where do you feel that in your body? What does that look like? What thoughts come up around that? Like, I can generally speak about safety, but it'd be better if I worked with you and we exposed what's going on, because there's a natural sense of making the body safe. Like that's part of being human, that we're not going to put ourselves in front of a lion with its mouth roaring and open, or we're not going to jump off cliffs with no wings or parachutes, or we're not going to eat all our food in one day when we've got to make it last for 2 weeks because we've got no more food coming. We have that ability to think and to understand and to recognize and to protect our bodies. But when you're constantly producing thoughts like that, then there's obviously some deeper thought cycle that's active that we could explore, but I need to go into you personally about that. The ultimate freedom is seeing that you are home in every moment, because you are that presence and that alive looking, that empty looking. You're everything and nothing. But on the human level, you know, that's part of conditioning that can happen, is feeling unsafe in certain situations. So we can explore that, and sometimes we can identify with that, and then there can be lots of seeking to avoid it, which encourages it and makes it stronger. But I really need to work with you one-to-one. So if you feel brave enough, then you could call in and we could work on it. If not, then you can book a one-to-one session, or you can wait until you get confidence to do it online. So you say that we cannot decide or choose, that the body and his memory change, but it could be reconditioned. Could you say how it could happen? Reconditioning of the body, Edith, is happening all the time. Whenever you switch on YouTube or the news, or you interact with someone, the conditioning is always being updated. The body is always analysing the situation like an interactive robot and reconditioning itself. So learning new information is reconditioning yourself, exploring sensations, understanding how things happen is reconditioning yourself, understanding non-duality is reconditioning yourself. So reconditioning is always happening. But it's not anybody's choice, because who would that be? Who's moving this body? Who's directing this body? Who's experiencing all of this? Where do choices and decisions get made? A choice comes up to watch a video, a choice comes up to look at your conditioning, but where does that choice come from? It begins to be seen that there is no chooser at the bottom of the choices. There's this infinite space in which life appears and disappears from. And that's who you truly are, this empty watching and this alive presence. And life comes and goes in that. So your thoughts come up, your reconditioning comes up, and the freedom is that still, silent watcher that isn't separate from all things and is all things. Hi Chris, hello Lisa. Lisa, hello. I feel that you are becoming a great teacher, being extremely practical on the psychological level and balancing the non-dual aspect as well. Sorry, not the one to judge, just appreciate and respect you. Love, thank you for your voluntary work, helping us and accompanying us on the so-called journey. So tolerant and gentle teacher. Human love. Oh, thanks, Chris. It's nice. I love it. I love psychologically understanding the human. It's like an experiment Like understanding the way these body minds work is a passion of mine. I love it deeply. And then expressing non-duality is a passion as well. And trying to put those two together, because really they aren't together. Like the freedom is beyond the personality structure. It's not about the personality structure becoming more balanced or getting anything. Like if you look at lots of famous speakers that speak about non-duality, so say someone like Eckhart Tolle, you know, they weren't in therapy or having psychological help. They actually were in their deepest, darkest despair when this awakening happened. Then after, I think that they began to learn about therapy and reconditioning. So it you know, it can happen in all different types of way, and it's not really about reconditioning the body. It's that movement back to that watcher, or the movement forward to the watcher, because the watcher isn't anywhere. The watcher is all things, and this intimacy with things, and this remembering of this alive presence, and seeing that who you are is not a thing and everything. And then from my work over the last 7 years, I've become more and more aware that often people come to this subject when they're suffering a lot, and so sometimes or often their psychology is a lot out of balance. They've got themselves into negative thinking or difficult patterns, and then they try to use the non-dual message as therapy, often because people feel ashamed to go to therapy. They feel like by going to therapy it's saying there's something wrong with me. So they listen to non-duality and they try to use non-duality as therapy. And they're actually right. Therapy without listening to non-duality will just go round in circles. It might help balance the person to an extent, but I really feel like it has to be heard that's not who you are, for there to be a real change in that person, to understand those two to understand that you aren't that personality structure, and then also to work on the reconditioning of it so it becomes impersonal. It's not so important. But often people feel ashamed, feel they've failed if they go to therapy, feel there's something wrong with them, or feel that they've been to lots of therapy groups and they've never really helped, or it's never really worked for them, and or they've felt patronized by a therapist, or they've had a bad experience. So then they've tried to use non-duality to work as therapy, and that can work to an extent, and the non-dual message can recondition you in a positive way to an extent, but it can also recondition you in a negative way, like to start telling yourself there is no doer or there is nobody, as a way to try and compensate for post-traumatic stress disorder or childhood abuse, or relationship abuse, or financial difficulties, for all these things, to try and say, you know, there is nobody, there's nobody here experiencing this, there's nobody that died, there's nobody that's in pain. I feel like this can be quite damaging psychologically for that person. So I've come to realize if you're going to speak about non-duality, in a way you have to speak about psychology or conditioning, not psychology, because I'm not a psychologist, but the conditioning of the person to an extent. And I'm often pointing out to people or working with people and suggesting they go for therapy, because this isn't therapy. But from my experience and my understanding of the person, pointing that out can help people to understand the difference and to go deeper into their conditioning, and then maybe take that step to also do therapy as well, or also join some therapeutic groups. There's so many amazing therapeutic practices out there, but I'm not a therapist in any way, and I cannot claim to help therapeutically in that way because I'm not a trained therapist. I can explore conditioning with people and explore the psychology from my exploration, and then that can help people see the difference between non-duality and the psychological work. And I think that is a nice balance, because it began to hurt me after years of speaking about this, realizing that people were using non-duality to try and cover up big psychological scars. That hurt to watch that. And I had to begin to bring in conditioning and pointing that out, because it hurt me to not address that with people. But at first I didn't realize, because I did to an extent use non-duality as like a band-aid for my psychological issues, but I was also really aware of my psychological issues. Like, I went for therapy and I did lots of therapeutic groups, so I was also super aware of it. So I didn't do that. So it wasn't, when I studied Buddhism, Buddhism taught psychology as well as meditation, so I didn't have that problem. But I think that part of the reason why people just go for non-duality is because I feel like sometimes if people, it's like a drug addict, it's like they can listen to non-duality on the internet and it's beautiful, it's so beautiful, it's amazing, it is the total freedom, but it's almost like a drug addict has to admit it has a problem before it can heal. So it's like the personality structure, it's listening to non-duality and it's hearing it, and that's really profound, but then at some point this personality structure has to acknowledge in itself there is a problem and that it needs to heal from that problem. And I feel like it takes a lot for people to admit that, because they feel ashamed. There's also different things, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like, if you look at our society, it's not a healthy society to grow up in, and we're told in our society that freedom is found by buying things and freedom is found in the future, which is a total lie. And so therefore we feel ashamed, we feel like we screwed up because we couldn't live like everybody else like that. Like, we couldn't get things and feel happy, we couldn't work towards the future and feel happy. And so we feel like we've done something wrong. And so admitting that there's a problem psychologically with the way we're thinking, with the way we're relating with people, it makes us feel really bad about ourselves. Whereas you can listen to non-duality, and in a way you can start telling yourself a story like, oh, the enlightenment story, it's because I resonate with enlightenment, or it's because I haven't heard this, and it kind of, for a while, steps you around admitting that psychologically you need help, because then you feel guilty, like you've done something bad, and you haven't. Like, everybody in this society, I think, needs to learn about psychology and learn about conditioning and learn about traumas. Everybody. And I think that it's a disgrace in our society that it's not taught in school. We should all be taught about this. And it's of nobody's fault. It's the effect of the society we've grown up in. And some people have a harder beginning than others, and some people have more traumas than others. And of course you're going to need some help to overcome some of the things that you face in this life, rather than just ignoring it like our society says. You just ignore it and you buy another phone, you buy another sofa, you buy another car, you pretend it's not happening, you smile to society, you put on a smiley face on Facebook. That's a disgrace that that's what our society is selling us. And luckily now with YouTube, it's changing. Like even celebrities are coming out talking about their problems and talking about changing, and that's a great thing, because that means our society is changing and is accepting and acknowledging that our structure isn't working psychologically for people, that just having lots of money isn't the answer. And so that is a really good thing. Thanks. So Chris says, I watch many teachers, Roger, Gangaji, Rupert, Muji, Ramesh and Ramana. None of them are joining these two aspects. So this is wonderful. I feel so much that the approach is the most useful and helpful. Gratitude. Ah, nice. Yeah. Some teachers do, like Gangaji will suggest to stay with the feelings. So they talk about it to an aspect, and I understand why they're reserved talking about it, because they feel like it keeps you in the mental activity, or it keeps you in the story. But if that energy is going into the story, it needs to be addressed. Like, why does it keep going into the story? You're not going to be able to pull yourself fully out of it by saying I am, or I am consciousness, or I am the looker. To an extent that will break it, and that has relevance, but also there needs to be, I feel, addressing as to why this seeking energy is getting addicted to certain thought patterns. Like, what is the actual issue there? What's hurting inside the body? What's the difficulty? Like, why does that thought keep repeating? And I feel like sometimes that needs to be addressed as to why something keeps repeating. Because in a way the thoughts are repeating because they want to heal something, but they don't know how. There's a problem, but they don't know how to do that. So thanks.
Hi Lisa.
Hey Diana. Hey.
Nice. Well, I made the courage to call finally.
Yeah, nice.
Because I could get a bit of this energy that comes up, it creates a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like that victim identity.
Yeah.
Where the body feels fear to justify that it needs something, because it doesn't have the courage to just say, I need this, I need a job, I need a relationship, stuff like that. So it makes it seem like a victim.
Yeah.
So that people get to it without asking, something like that.
Yeah.
And I went a bit deeper. I saw that when you make decisions like this in your life, as a person, sometimes you upset other people, your family or friends, or not everybody can agree with that decision. It's almost impossible to make everybody agree.
Yeah.
The mind doesn't understand that some people are not going to agree with that decision. So it goes into this pattern somehow.
Yeah.
And I feel it's this way somehow. But sometimes I see it and it comes back.
Yeah.
I've seen it a year ago and it's coming back time to time.
Yeah.
Usually around decision making.
It's all around decision making.
Yes. It's saying I want this.
Yeah.
Which I know somebody's not going to agree with.
And so do you can I just ask, do you have headphones nearby, because your volume is or your audio is not so good, it's hard for me to hear you?
Oh no, I don't have no, I think my laptop has low volume. This is the reason. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's a funny sound. You'll hear when you listen to it back. It's like you're moving closer and further away to the microphone.
Yeah, probably I was. I put the laptop closer now and I stay still. Probably the sound is gonna be better.
Yeah. So just so you have problems making decisions.
Decisions that upset other people, like my family or stuff.
Yeah.
Usually my mother.
Yeah. Yeah. So you compromise what you want to do in order to make others happy?
Yes.
And so can you feel that in your body now? Like,
I feel a lot of nervousness, anxiety in my chest, and also in my head, in the back of my head. I feel like trembling.
Yeah.
It's shame, also shame.
Yeah.
And it's also something that knows it's not true and wants to hide it, right? Likes to keep this pattern. I feel this part of unsincerity also is there. Like even if I'm talking to you, I'm trying to get you to solve my problem, and I know this is impossible. So how?
Yeah. It's so hard for me to hear you. It's hard for me to make out what you're saying.
Okay. Is it better now?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now is it good?
You have to speak a little to see.
Okay. Let me see.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's really hard for me to understand what you're saying. Like, I think it's just there's something not quite right with the microphone. You're here when you hear back, but it means that I'm missing a lot of what you're telling me.
Okay. I'll go back a bit. So it's kind of a lack of courage to take decisions, and like an attempt to go to others to help me do that, so that I can convince myself that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to give it one more try because it's really hard for me to understand you, but we'll give it one more try, and I'll ask you some questions. So what is it that you fear that's going to happen to you if you do what you want to do?
That I'm going to be not loved, abandoned,
Yeah.
that I don't know what is good for me, and that I'm being selfish,
Yeah.
and I see I'm using nonduality and the wholeness of the self to deny what I need on the personal level.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's super important knowing what you want. So right now, what is it that you want? What is it that you want from this conversation? This is just to help as an example.
I see this is an energy and a pattern, and I would like to break this pattern.
Yeah. Why would you like to break this pattern? What would you like to stop feeling?
This lack of power in a way. This
Lack of power.
yes. This not assuming.
Yeah.
This avoidance of
Yeah.
making decisions.
Yeah.
Because I see it's unfair for everybody.
Yeah.
And it produces a lot of thinking, a lot of worry.
Yeah. So where do you feel lack of power in your body?
Around the first chakra.
Around where?
The abdominal area, the tummy.
Yeah. So you are totally able to make decisions. And you are powerful. You do have that strength to make decisions. And you're not guilty or wrong for making decisions. So notice that feeling when it's coming up in your belly. Be really aware of when the feeling comes and see that it's absolutely not true, that there's nothing bad that's going to happen to you from getting and knowing what you want. You're allowed to have what you want. Obviously, there's got to be an awareness of other people's feelings. I'm not talking about stealing from people or doing something really horrible, but just acknowledging what you want and putting it out there, saying, this is what I want. I want to do this. I want to have more time. I want to go shopping now, or I don't want to go over for dinner, or whatever it is. Just acknowledge that and see that you're not guilty and that nothing bad is going to happen to you if you don't do things. And notice when that feeling is getting activated in your body. Pay attention to when that begins to hurt. And see that it's not true. You can even think the opposite. You can think of a situation where you were empowered. And then also see that that's not who you are. Who you are is that empty looking and that alive presence in which that appears and disappears in. And you're not limited to that contraction or that bad feeling. That's an aspect appearing in you. But just acknowledge the feeling when it's there, and it will begin to transform and change as you stop acting out that pattern.
I feel that there is an energy that opposes this because somehow it doesn't want to admit making mistakes, that the person is somehow imperfect.
Yeah.
And this settles around somewhere around the heart. So the energy of doing a free will comes up, and there's something that stops it.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to admit it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like the self-image that it has of itself is going to get affected if it makes a mistake.
Yeah. And that's absolutely not true. So can you remember a time in childhood where you felt attacked for making a mistake? And remember that this is being recorded on YouTube,
Yes.
so don't overexpose yourself. You can pick something that's less exposing if you like you don't have to really go for it.
There is a time, but I'm going to make it more general. When I was in kindergarten,
Yeah.
I was more of a rebel child. I was a girl that was playing with boys, and sometimes there were fights in between us. And I wasn't behaving. And I remember once my mother tore up a picture of myself that I gave to her because I was unobedient. I wasn't behaving like I was supposed to do on a school reunion. I wasn't doing my part. I wasn't reciting the poems, stuff like that. I was acting inappropriate, and she got very mad with me. But a lot of situations like that happened in kindergarten, where I wasn't like the other girls. The girls were like more relaxed, more playing with dolls. I was
Yeah.
with the boys and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion about this situation. So I probably felt a lot that I was bad doing this.
So can you feel that in the body when you say it? Can you remember those situations and feel that fear that you felt of authority?
Yes.
Where do you feel that?
around the stomach. It's
Yeah.
very strong.
So just acknowledge that, and acknowledge that that game that you're playing in relationship that's trying not to feel guilty, trying not to feel like it makes a mistake. Acknowledge that. It's really trying to hold on to power and control.
Yes. Yeah, it's very strong.
Yeah. So what you can do when you're by yourself later is you can acknowledge other situations where that happened in your life. And just let that feeling grow. You can even massage it and see that it's not true. That's not who you are. That's a feeling that's come and gone in the body, and that habit, acting out that habit, is never going to end. You're never going to one day arrive and it's going to finish, that you're going to be this perfect person that never makes a mistake. That's not the nature of this life. The nature of this life is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So just acknowledge that. And when you're by yourself, you can acknowledge those feelings. And then when you begin to finish that, just begin to feel empowered that you can make choices and that you can make mistakes, and that's okay. And that you will overcome it. You know how I tell people openly that I'm a writer and that I write scripts. The way in which you write scripts is all based really on mistakes and problems. So you like every 10 pages or so, or 15 pages, or every 10 or 15 minutes, you have to put something in where the character's made a bad choice and that choice has led to a problem. And then the next part of the TV show or the script is them solving that problem. You see, this is the way we are as humans, is that we fix things. A problem comes and we fix it. A problem comes and we fix it. And as we become more balanced, then that can pass through our body, that we make a mistake and then there is we find another way to get round that mistake. And that's not talking about you. When you think it's you, there begins to be so much fear around making mistakes, around problem solving, that's just a habit that happens, like the rain falling, like the wind blowing, like the trees growing leaves. So that the human has these things, during the day, all the time, the situations that work and don't work, and that you don't have to be blown over by it. That it doesn't say anything about you when something doesn't work. That doesn't talk about your value. Your value is the I am. Your value is the empty looker. And then in the human life, we're always coming against things that work and things that don't work, and then finding a way around it. And the easier that you can learn from those mistakes and move past those mistakes, the easier the life of the body-mind will become. And the part of the way that happens is acknowledging how that energy's got stuck in your body, acknowledging when you're feeling all those complicated feelings, and then also seeing that none of that is you. That you do not found value in time. Like you do not find your love in time. Your love is your I am. Your love is your sense of existence. Your love is the empty looker. Your love isn't being successful. Your love isn't being appreciated by people. Your love is.
Yes, I think it's somehow an exaggerated desire to be appreciated all the time.
Yeah. It's a habit, and it's a habit that you've picked up throughout your life. So you'll have picked it up from your mother, you'll have picked it up from education system, and your mind will have just fixated on it. And then ultimately you'll believe that one day you'll be perfect and you'll be lovable and you'll reach home. Whereas actually home is here, and that habit isn't true. The habit that's telling you you've got to be perfect, otherwise death, otherwise bad things will happen, isn't true. What is true is this is happening, is this is. But nice. Thanks for calling in, Diana. This is maybe, Diana, that's all we have to work on today. But yeah, for being vulnerable and exposing it. That's sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of love. Hi Sandra. Hi Lewis. Hi Hilango, thanks for the picture. Okay guys, that's enough now. We've been going for a long time, so I won't be streaming for quite a few weeks now, so you have to check my website when I'm next streaming. I'm away on retreat, and if you want to join my retreat, there is still places, I believe, and you can find that information on my website, which should be linked up here in the corner somewhere, I think. There or there, you'll see an I, and you can click on the website and find out about that. Okay, thanks guys. Bye.